Good morning and welcome to the third edition of United Way's Facebook Live series based on a monthly topic. This week we are talking about mental health awareness because it is in fact Mental Health Awareness Month. And before we get started, just want to thank all of our sponsors that make this and all of the things that we do in the community possible. So thank you and greetings, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning.
So I thought we could start off with just going around and introducing ourselves and a little bit about how the work you do ties into the overall arching topic, mental health awareness. April?
Okay, I'll start. Sure. I'm April Douglas. I'm the Director of Public Relations for AltaPoint Health. We are Alabama's largest health and human services organization. We provide 1 million services across 7 counties in Alabama, and those services include mental health care. We also do substance abuse services, intellectual disability services, and we also offer primary care. We're starting to move into integrated care services, really taking care of the whole person, because from what we've learned, what's happening with your physical health also impacts your mental health and vice versa. So thank you for having me.
Alison?
Hi, I'm Alison Herlihy. I am an attorney here in Mobile. I practice primarily family law, like divorce and things like that. But I also handle involuntary commitment dockets for the mentally ill in probate court. And that's been part of my practice for my whole career, which is going on 16 years now.
Wonderful. Chandra?
Hey, I'm Chandra Brown. I'm Agency Director for Lifelines Counseling Services. We do a gamut of services for folks who may be in need. So we have crisis, emotional, financial, and housing counseling and education for community members in Southwest Alabama. We also have as a program 211 that we contract with United Way to provide those services. So if folks need to know resources in the community, they can call 211 and we can help them with health and human service needs.
All right. Justine and Katherine?
I'm Justine Bixler. I'm our Vice President of Resource Development with United Way. And we obviously, raise funds necessary to support programs through our partner agencies like AltaPoint and Lifelines and 211.
I'm Katherine Pitman. I work in the community impact section of United Way. I'm the outreach and community coordinator, and I work with all our partner agencies, of course, including those agencies that support health of the communities that we serve.
And I'm Leslie Schraeder. I am the marketing specialist and also the labor engagement liaison. And our moderator for today. The first thing I was in a meeting yesterday and it hadn't occurred to me, but it came up and a lot of people were interested that the difference between mental health and mental illness, that a lot of times they actually get lumped together and that they're separate. Can any of you guys speak to those differences and how that can affect folks?
Sure. I mean, I think that our mental health is how and where we stand in our well-being daily. We may also call that mental wellness or our mental care. Just like our physical health, while we go to the doctors and we get checked in, and what April was just alluding to with the integrative care, because what happens in our brain happens in our body. So that's our mental health. That's just all a part of who we are and what we do and how we perceive the world. Mental illness, and I'll pass it over to April when I finish that, but mental illness to me, and she can correct me because she's the expert on this piece. Mental illness is when, there are sometimes that we have glitches, and it could be chemical, it could be environmental, it could be just things that have happened in our lives that causes us to perceive the world in a very different way. And we adjust to it and we acclimate it to it in ways that could be perceived as just unhealthy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm certainly not the clinician, but I agree exactly with what you said. I think a lot of times people can throw terms around such as depression and I'm depressed, and really they're not. So, but we do have a plethora and all of those clinicians here that can help you determine that if you thought maybe that you had a mental illness or that you were questioning your mental health, that could help you find those. We have YouTube channels that explain the differences in those, but I think a lot of times people do confuse the two, and there certainly is a difference.
It is interesting how people commonly throw around terms associated with mental illness, colloquially. I mean, almost every day I have a divorced client who comes in my office and says, my wife's bipolar or my husband's a narcissist. That's like the narcissist is the new popular diagnosis. And you have to go, okay, wait a minute. Do you mean like she's been diagnosed with this mental illness by a doctor? And it's like, no, sometimes she's happy and sometimes she's mad. So she's bipolar. And you're like, okay.
And I think that's part of what we're doing here today is educating people. I think there are a lot of misconceptions and people, I'm guilty of it. Before I joined AltaPoint nearly 10 years ago, I was one of those people who used the term crazy or who said I was depressed, and I really didn't know what it meant. But having worked in this field now, knowing how we have to be better about the words we choose, and to really, we are the people who are going to end the stigma, to let people know that we're not making fun of you or you can't use those terms anymore, because people, it does have an impact on people's lives and whether or not they come forward to seek treatment. So definitely.
And I think it's important to also recognize that your mental health, mental wellness is on a continuum. So absolutely, there may be days that I am depressed, and I probably could clinically be defined as that. Like there may be moments and spaces in life that things happen to me. Like life comes in waves to us. There are good and there are bad. So folks that are seemingly like, I guess if I go back to like counseling one-on-one, like we have our lives in a bell curve, right? So most of the people, 80% of us fall like right under that curve. There'll be 10% and 10% that can be at either extreme, right? So we can have 10% of our or 20% of our population that may be impacted by schizophrenia or personality disorders or depression or anxiety or any of those things. It doesn't mean that we don't feel it, or it doesn't mean that many of us across that continuum don't experience it in reaction to something that happens in our lives, right? So a trauma happens, a divorce happens, somebody dies, right? We are a victim of a violent crime, or any of those things can allow us or put us in that space where that, and I don't like to use the word mental illness because I think like it's just our response to life. It's just us being like human. So we're terming it in a very, it's important that we find the language at, and then we reframe it in a different way. But we often feel like we're penalized for you being really sad and falling in a deep depression because your mom died of COVID. Like, that's okay. It
is okay. It is. And
that's
I think
normal.
That's been the message that we've tried really to spread, is that it's okay to not be okay. It's all right to feel those things. And I think that COVID really, looking on the bright side of what it's done for our society, is it's made people who maybe never before thought of seeking mental health help have said, you know what, I could use that, or I could do that. We've seen since October 40,000 calls to our access to care. And, in 6 months, it's just incredible.
We had Jason join us. Jason, will you introduce yourself and tell us what your connection to mental health awareness and the United Way and your job?
Yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit late, guys.
No worries.
My name's Jason Bryum, and I am here to represent Victory Health Partners. Kim Garrett wasn't able to be here today. She is traveling with her family, so I am filling in for her. And I'm a therapist at Victory.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. So we now that we're viewing everything through the lens of COVID, and we know that even more challenges have been exposed and even amplified. Alabama was ranked 40th in mental health before. So how has and one of the statistics from the State of Mental Health in America said that between January and September, over 300,000 people that responded to their survey, 93% had increased anxiety, and over 500,000 had 62% increased depression. So how are you guys seeing that play out in your professions, in your workplaces, and how has COVID affected the way that you're able to meet those needs?
Well, we never actually shut down during COVID, so we continue to see patients. But gosh, I can tell you, I mean, it's like never before, the numbers that I've been seeing every day. And you're right, with the depression and the anxiety, I think the biggest thing I've seen is the isolation. People staying away from friends, staying away from family, thinking they can pull through some of this stuff on their own and not realizing that we need each other, whether that's through a therapeutic setting, through family, through friends. We can't do this stuff alone.
And we just recently did the isolation. We did a hotline with WKRG, and the majority of those calls were people who, since the pandemic started, they're experiencing isolation and grief of just a loss of way of life. And, when you typically think of grief, you think it's because you've, lost a loved one, but they're grieving over birthday parties they didn't get to attend, graduations, those big special moments. So I think COVID really has impacted for us. Of course, we never shut down either, but it did open up the door for people to access our services easier through telehealth. People who maybe didn't want to come to our office because they didn't want to see their neighbor in the lobby or they didn't want to see their teacher, they can easy access our services using telehealth. I think that's been another benefit to come out of the pandemic, and I'm hoping that it's here to stay.
I think something else that we saw were the number of kids that were coming through, that because of all the things that happened with COVID, they lost that level of structure. I think we as humans don't recognize enough how much we need structure in our lives, how much we need those spaces. And what is it? I think I went to a conference one time and they said to raise a happy child, you need structure, rules, rituals, traditions, and discipline. Like, you need those 5 things. And so if you have mom and dad that are just kind of struggling to make ends meet, if you have a kid that's not in school, that's where they would get that structure. Like, we're seeing high numbers of depression and anxiety in our youth because they haven't had that. And they need that connectedness, right? They need to be a part of sports. They need to be with their friends. They need to be connected in those ways. So yeah, I think what Jason and April said, and to corroborate that, the impact that we'll see will be for years to come.
I don't think anyone really knows for sure exactly what we'll see. And through our integrated care, another beautiful thing that's come out of it is that we're able to see that child who maybe was struggling with the isolation or an eating disorder. We have the psychiatrist and the pediatrician together in the office. So we're able to really wrap that person in services and hope that to lessen that impact as much as we can.
From my perspective, we've seen a really major overhaul in the way our courts do business, which was necessitated by COVID. In domestic relations court in the olden days, a year and a couple of months ago, it was common practice to have what we call like a cattle call docket, where they set 25 cases at 9 o'clock, and you don't know, if your case is going to go or when it's going to go, and as you can imagine, that process can be pretty inefficient. But, nowadays you can't put 200 plus people in a courtroom anymore. So the entire legal process has been changed. And I will say our court, domestic relations court, obviously all the courts were shut down for like 8 to 12 weeks. But other than that, we picked right up, and our judges and their staff have done a tremendous amount of work to continue to push cases through. And in probate court with involuntary commitments, they had to really restructure the way that they do things and work with AltaPoint to develop a case review team so that they're only seeing the most serious and essential cases in the courtroom. But everyone really worked together to put in a lot of work to make sure people still had access to justice, which is very important. I'll say also, just from the kind of divorce perspective, I've seen a lot of people who maybe, absent COVID, they probably would have been, trucking along with lots of life distractions. And then when you have to spend that much time together without anywhere to go or ball practices to go to or whatever, you realize it kind of has ushered some people into divorce probably a lot faster than they would have gotten divorced otherwise. And I think that's definitely related to mental health. You've seen Lots of people turn into substances to cope, whether that's alcohol or drugs or food or internet shopping or whatever you want to call it. That's been an issue. And, just the day in, day out uncertainty of what's going to happen, I think has led a lot of people into a space of depression and anxiety that maybe they didn't sense before, but it's just, you can only pile so many circumstances on top of each other before it can take anyone to that place. And I'm hopeful that it's given more people a better understanding that mental health and mental illness are not a joke. It's not for people who are crazy or freakish or whatever. This affects everyone, and that getting help is a good thing. It's not something to be ashamed of.
I agree. I would so agree with that it's okay. It's okay that you're not well. It's okay, and that there are options available to you. So I think that's been the best part that's come out of it, for sure.
So, as we're talking, do you guys have any ideas or tips to help us and our kids and our loved ones be healthy? Yes, reaching out and asking for help, but maybe some day-to-day things, or just a way to approach it to make sure that we're doing the best for ourselves that we can.
Yeah, I think it's things that we can sit and tell you, and we're like, well, yeah, I know it, but it's just so hard to do, right? It's so hard to put our phones down. It's so hard to break patterns because now they become habits, right? So it's so hard for us to get a good night's sleep, to eat a good meal, to put ourselves on schedules, to give ourselves levels of structure, to because that's not fun. That's not exciting. That's boring. It's not fun to say, if something's not right, maybe I need to go talk to somebody. And maybe you're totally against mental health care, going to see a therapist. That's cool. Maybe there's a spiritual advisor in your life. Maybe there are a group of friends. There are tons of books on Amazon that you can buy about whatever. Find some information from a trusted source and start learning about it. Our mental health is a journey. It's a process. And we have to start making a commitment to it if we want to help get ourselves in better places.
Something I've learned working, it's just so fascinating, the whole world of behavioral healthcare for me, but something that I've learned, and people who have reached out to us asking us to come speak or to put together flyers, is to limit your exposure to things. If you find something that's upsetting, when COVID first started, that's all we saw on the news and everywhere. And so you're constantly bombarded with that. And so the therapist here really said, just, limit yourself. Don't spend 12 hours a day. Now the news is on, there are 24-hour news networks, but just limit that exposure to things that you are upsetting. Inform yourself. And like you said, find that trusted source, but really just limit your exposure. It's okay to turn the television off every now and then, and you don't have to listen to it 24/7.
I like to add for myself, just the stress of work and life and home balance. That's a big thing too. A lot of us work and have a home to take care of and children to take care of. And for me, it's to get out and do the things that I enjoy, whether it's, walking or exercising, just sitting and enjoying nature. That's kind of what I like to do, or listen to a just book that, just pure entertainment, something like that. That really helps my, mental state, whatever I'm going through at the moment. And then I can get to the other side of it, recognize what's going on in me and then taking care of it, whether I need to talk to a professional or is it something that I can take care of myself through just my daily practices of taking care of myself.
And I think it's so important as therapists that we do that. I think sometimes we get so busy, especially, during and after a pandemic, that it's easy to let those self-care things go. Are we still eating decent? Are we still working out? Are we still spending time with family and friends, getting regular checkups, getting blood work done at the doctor's office? Just taking care of ourselves, I think, is critical that we focus on that. for our families and for our patients.
I think kind of like a central theme that everybody says, you know, when you like, there's a lot of stigma obviously around mental health and mental illness, but mental health is impacts every single person. It goes far beyond just you as an individual, maybe not having an actual diagnosis of a mental illness. It's all the self-care components that all of y'all were speaking about. And I think, you know, to follow up on the services that our agencies like AltaPoint and Lifelines provide from a United Way perspective, we've seen just an increase of the need for those services across the board. You know, not just literal mental health services, but the drug and alcohol services. Chandra mentioned children. You know, I was at a conference yesterday, and over 63% of our youth in the Mobile County Public School System are on free and reduced lunch. So that means they rely on being in school to have a meal or two, you know, oftentimes could be breakfast or lunch. And when they weren't in school, they weren't able to have those meals. And everybody knows that like one big component of self-care is your personal nourishment. So if you're not eating and you add that on to the stress of being at home, the stress your parents are experiencing by being at home from work, having a child in the house, trying to do school, trying to do work and life at the same time. So many people were just exposed to something entirely different that they weren't used to and didn't have any I guess, predefined kind of coping mechanisms for. So that kind of self-care ended up being the primary tool to get the balance of one's life back, I guess, in a lot of ways.
I will say, and this might make Chandra laugh because she called me, I think, one time the queen of boundaries. Was that what? And, you know, I think it's just the simple act of learning how to say no, you know, because we're all helpers, you know, and we want to say yes, and we want everybody to be okay. But if you get to the point that you're doing that to the exclusion of yourself to where you can't be okay, it's time to learn how to say no, you know, and sometimes no is the whole answer. You don't have to say, no, I can't do that because I don't have time and blah, 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 you know, because you don't really owe people an explanation for what you do with your time, you know, and if you have somebody in your life that sends off those red flags and alarm bells, maybe they don't need to be in your life, you know, or if you're already on, you know, 2 boards and you play on a sports team and you have kids and you have a full-time job and somebody wants you to do another thing, maybe you just need to say no, you know, because it's okay to have time off. It's okay to relax, and we don't have to fill up every second of every day with busyness and activity, you know?
Yeah.
Great point with the boundaries. Absolutely.
So this whole mental health and how we address it has come a long way over the years. Obviously, there's still a long way to go, but I'd like to hear what you think some of our greatest improvements are, and then we'll circle back around and see what you guys think are some of our greatest needs still as we move forward.
I'll start. I think our greatest improvements, since I've been at AltaPoint, I can tell you the school-based therapy is a great addition to the whole continuum of care. It provides that in-school service. We have a therapist in schools in Mobile and Baldwin counties, and they're able to see the children in their environment. Parents don't have to take off work to get to a therapy appointment. I think that's been a great improvement. I think telehealth has really been a wonderful addition to the behavioral health care continuum, and it allows people to access service from virtually anywhere. And, you know, a lot of people, maybe they can't leave their homes. Their mental illness or their mental health is not well and they can't leave, and that allows them to access it from anywhere. I think those have been the improvements. I think the integrated care at AltaPoint is a great addition, and it's the future of healthcare, taking care of that whole person, realizing, again, what your mental health impacts your physical health and your physical health impacts your mental health. So I think those are the biggest improvements that I've seen in the field since I've been here.
I think an improvement that we've made probably as a community is I really love the fact that we're really talking about mental health, mental wellness a lot more. You know, we may not be saying the right words, we may not be saying it correctly, but I think you can go to Instagram, you can go to Facebook, and you can see a lot of language around toxicity and toxic people and boundaries and, you know, all of these things. So I think it's really cool when I hang out with folks that are in high school and they know these words and they understand this language and they get boundaries and they are growing up in this culture and with this language. I think that's been a benefit, that we have language around how we're feeling. Now, we may feel a little too much. It may have gone way over to the other side, but as we know, it'll come back and balance itself.
You know, I think we've seen so much improvement just over my career at all levels in the legal system that people are becoming more savvy and sensitive and aware about issues of mental illness. Because, I mean, as y'all all know, mental illness and the legal system go hand in hand, you know, from criminal law to probate court to divorce court to everywhere. But there's still a long way to go, obviously. You know, I would love to see us have a mental health court here to help, because, I mean, you know, a huge percentage of people that are in jails and prisons are mentally ill or have substance abuse problems or both, you know. And we see so many issues in divorce court and juvenile court, you know, from problems with parenting and children being at risk because there's a need for mental health treatment that's either not available or people don't have the wherewithal to go find it or whatever. And, you know, and I just think at all levels and at all income levels in our community, we need so many more mental health care providers than we have in the Mobile area. There are not enough people to treat the people that need it in this community. It's far below where it should be for our population. Not that the people that we have, like at Alta Point, aren't wonderful, but we need about 10 times more people than we have, I feel like. You know, when you have people that have to leave the city or leave the state to go see a psychiatrist, I mean, that's a problem. So, and it's big. So if y'all know anybody that's graduating school in a mental health career, please beg them to move here. That'll be my pitch.
And I want to say, too, how grateful we are to you guys at Alison. I mean, we do not have a psychiatrist. And so, you know, there are quite a few cases that we send to you guys, and you do a wonderful job. And I just want to thank you all for that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we are training, speaking of training that next generation of healthcare, you said we need those in the state. We are the Department of Psychiatry for the University of South Alabama, and we train those clinicians so that we can keep them here because we know that we're getting a good batch.
Uh-oh. Did everybody or just me?
I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm free from the freeze.
Yeah.
I'll jump in on that while she's
Okay.
frozen and say, I will say the psychiatrists that we have from Alta Point that come and testify regularly in probate court are probably some of the best trained psychiatrists in Mobile. I mean, we have people that work at our community health, mental health provider, Alta Point, that have literally done fellowships at like Harvard and Yale. And I think a lot of people in the community maybe don't know about that. It's very impressive to me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, hey, we lost her altogether. Hopefully she'll come back.
I think from a resource perspective, you know, United Way, we have 46 partner agencies. And last year, about 20 of those agencies provided a health component. And many of those was a mental health component, a program. When I say component, a function of their job was to provide that care. And so I think as the stigma lifts and as the need, and like Chandra mentioned, as more people are expressing acknowledgement of how they're feeling in an open platform, it's kind of spreading that other people feel more comfortable expressing that. And there's a larger need that's vocalized for those programs. And so our agencies, you know, our partner agencies, are stepping up and creating new programs or growing their current programs like at Lifelines, or adding new programs that maybe they haven't before to think of more innovative ways to tackle some of the problems in our community. So, you know, on our end, like Alison mentioned, you know, there are never enough financial resources available to fund all of the need that's out there. And so the more money, you know, that we're obviously able to raise on an annual basis, the more we're able to fund those programs, because the needs there and the resources exist. We just need to, you know, grow the resources and give our agencies the tools they need to provide them for the community.
Yeah. I think if we're talking about like the things that we want to see, some of the things that I'd love to see is for us to continue to normalize mental health. I think something that, we could probably talk on a whole nother conversation on are the impact of trauma in the lives of many of our community members. And it just becomes a part of what they do. I think another piece of having that trauma conversation is also talking about race and talking about equity and inclusion, because all of that is wrapped up into one, although we often want to see it very segmented. I think it's all a part of the continuum in that conversation. Because we want everybody to get a certain level of care. And if I present a certain way and you don't understand my background or my culture or where I'm coming from, you could diagnose or misrepresent me in a way that doesn't need to be represented. And then that could keep me from coming back to care again, right? So culturally competent care, I think, is also very important. Helping our community members see, like, we can talk about it, but then there gets to be a point that we need to do something about it, right? So again, whether it's reaching out to a therapist, whether it's going to a spiritual advisor, whether it's going to your own journey and reading a whole bunch of books, whatever it is, we all have to take a level of responsibility for our own self-care. So, yeah.
All right. Well, does anybody, we're getting our 30-minute mark. Does anybody want to go around and give final thoughts? April's trying to get back on, but it for some reason it's not connecting. But let's go around and do one final thought, and then we will do a little closeout.
Okay. I think if you want to know about health and human resources in our area or anything that we talked about today, like, you can always dial 211. We can connect you with the local resources in our community and help you find the services that you need.
I would say, if you think one of your loved ones is suffering a mental illness to the point that it makes them a danger to themselves or to others, your option to have them have, compulsory mental health treatment is to file a petition for involuntary commitment in probate court. And Alta Point has a staff person on site at the courthouse that assists people with filing the petitions. So you would need to contact the probate court of Mobile County to pursue that. And they have a lot of information on their website.
I would say whether friends or family, whoever you're around the most, I would say keep an eye on how that person's doing. Something to talk to you. Maybe they're a little quiet compared to how they normally are. Talk to them. Don't be shy about asking somebody how they're doing. I think that's really important.
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a community, we all have a responsibility. Our CEO, Jill, always says, we are our brother's keeper. And we can say, we can ask people that might be experiencing that to take the first step themselves and seek treatment or seek help or reach out to a friend. But also as a friend or a family member or loved one, we have a responsibility to make sure everybody around us is okay. Mm-hmm. And to reach out to them back, like Jason mentioned, and ask how they're doing. And sometimes, I don't know about y'all, but I definitely can think of that one person in my life who maybe asked at the right time and I wasn't willing to maybe share information or express how I was feeling about something or stress that I had or anxiety. It could be about life, job, relationship, anything. And just because they asked, I was willing to, say something. And if they hadn't, I probably never would. I'm stubborn. I probably never would have. And I have a feeling that a lot of people, are like that. And just to know that it's okay. And that there are a lot of resources out there and that you are not alone in reaching out to, a lot of people are reaching out, especially this past year now than ever. And that's a great first step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Katherine, anything before we go?
Well, I just, I want to thank, all our mental health partners at the United Way. And as Justine said, we had about 29 of our 47 partner agencies that do provide some sort of health. Many of them do supply, a mental health service. And so starting back to the beginning, don't forget that 211 is there. And everybody is here to help everybody together.
Mm-hmm.
So Thank you.
All righty. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be back next month. We have moved to the fourth Friday of the month. June is Pride Month, so we will be talking all things Pride as part of also our DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion growth. So please join us 11 on the fourth Friday next month. And thank you to all our guests for their insights, for joining us, for giving of their time. And again, if you need assistance, 211 is the best place to start. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.